If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then the UK Property Market Stat Show, is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and this week I'm joined by Kristian Stott. We'll come to Kristian in a second. Why should you watch this show? Well, the British are obsessed with the property market. Whenever the Times or Telegraph get a sniff of a property market article, it's all front page news. But when the Land Registry publish something, they're looking at sales that took place 8, 9, 10 months ago. The Halifax and Nationwide are looking at sales when they publish their stats from 2 or 3 months ago. We're looking at the property market and the house prices achieved last week. So if you want the inside track of what's happening in the property market, this is for you. And remember, estate agents, whenever you're at a party and someone finds out you're an agent, they always ask you the same question: how's the market? Well, this show's for you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at week 39 of 2025, which is Monday the 29th of September, all the way through to include Sunday the 5th of October. And we're going to compare week 39 against other week 39s. We're going to compare year to date compared to other year to dates. Go back to 2017. We'll be looking at house prices, and we'll be just looking at the market. The whole show lasts approximately 1 hour. The first half looks at the property market in the UK. And the second half is that we focus on a town or a city and really deep dive and find out who's the best agent in a particular town. This week, we're going to St Albans. We looked at St Albans at the start of the year, and I thought just for a little bit of a change, we'd go back sooner rather than later and see if any of the agents have been moving and shaking to grow their market share. So I'll be interested to have a look at that. This week, as I said, I'm joined by a special guest, Kristian Stott. Kristian is half estate agent, half PropTech guru. He's got fingers in many pies. He's a very, very clever man, and he's a great bridge between those two hot topics of property and PropTech. Thanks for joining me today, Kristian.
Good morning, Chris. And wow, I feel warm in my cheeks now.
There you go. You only come on this so you get that little 30 seconds of praise, smoke blowing up your backside. Bless you, but it's all well deserved. Right, okay. And again, I must thank Kristian for this. Unfortunately, the guest this week was going to be someone who unfortunately wasn't very well last night, so unfortunately had to postpone. So thank you for Kristian for stepping in to the mantle into the breach very, very quickly. Thank you. Right, so first half of the show is on the UK property market. The second half is on St Albans. If you are not from St Albans, you might find that awfully dull and tedious. However, if you are an agent that suffers from overvaluing, or you're an agent who suffers from agents who do cheap fees, then the piece of kit that we're going to analyse the agents in St Albans on will actually help you in your town beat overvaluing and cheap fees, because the bit of kit we're going to be using really is a special bit of kit, and it will analyze. It's like Rightmove Plus on steroids. But without further ado, let's go and have a look at the UK property market. For anyone that's not watched the show, what we do is we look at some stats and then we analyze them. So let's go and look at the stats now. Right, ladies and gentlemen, so what happens here is that I just spend 30 seconds discussing the stats, and then we ask Kristian his thoughts. So last week, in week 39, 34,339 properties came onto the market, and you can see how that compares to other weeks. The average value of a property coming onto the market is £430,182. Accumulatively, 1,411,000 properties have come onto the market, which is 2.4% ahead of last year and 10.4% ahead of the 9-year average. The white line on this graph shows you the listings on a week-by-week basis compared to the blue, which is 2024, and all the other years, as you can see on the graph here. Kristian, thoughts on listings?
Well, I was fortunate enough to do the session, was it 3 weeks ago, where you'd said that we were a week behind this year in terms of how the weeks fell. And it seemed that the market hadn't really jumped back into life at the end of the summer holidays. And interestingly, it corresponds with the conversations I've had with my mentees that the market is quite tough out there in terms of getting booked in valuations. That picture shows that white line a little lower than you'd want it to be, but I think your rebuttal on that is that the blue above it, 2018, for example, shows the weak period in year, but
Well,
it does look like it's tough out there.
I mean, I would have to slightly disagree with you on that one, in the fact that the only line that's higher is last year of 2024. But we are we are ahead of 17, 18, and 19. And look, and we're ahead of 2023 as well. You know,
Mm.
um, let's have a look. Let's have a look at the new, freshly updated stock levels. And this is fresh for these are the stock levels going in on the evening of the 30th of September, going into the 1st of October.
Yeah,
The turquoise lines are that 30th of October, 30th of September going into the 1st of October.
yeah.
So you can see that there is a slight uplift in the number of properties onto the market, although there tends to be, if you actually look at the preceding line, which is obviously August, there is always a slight growth in September of stock levels compared to August. Okay. What we're looking here is more of the trend, and you can see that stock
Yeah.
levels are generally higher. If we compare them with levels in the more normal years of 17, 18, and 19, then yes, the average there is, as I said, around 640. So therefore, there is 640. So there's about 15 to 16% more homes on the market today than
Mm.
there were in pre-COVID levels. Do remember that, back in 2008, that was at 1.3, 1.4. So some people saying there's too much stock on the market. There isn't too much stock on the market. I think it's a Goldilocks moment, neither too much, too little. I mean, whilst we're here, any thoughts on stock levels? These are the new figures for the months.
Like you say, it's a robust number, and a growing number. And I suppose if that number's growing whilst new instructions are declining forcibly, you've got latent stock. If they're growing together, shows for me reasonably healthy, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, again, this is a nice segue into this is the graph. Now, again, we are filming this on Tuesday, the 7th of October, and the stats were obtained yesterday on Monday, the 6th of October. So therefore, this red line is exchanges, and this yellow line is withdrawn. There is a lag of about 2 or 3 weeks of less of exchanges and listings. So that's not, so therefore, throughout the October figures will rise on both of them. But again, the thing that scares me is the number of exchanges. No, not the number of exchanges, the high level of withdrawals.
Yeah, is the budget a factor? I can't really work it out. It seems to me that there is agent rhetoric around the budget.
Well, let's look. Okay, so normally there again, you really have to take this September figure with a pinch of salt, and
Yeah,
I really wouldn't take much reference from it until probably the third week in October before we actually get. Now, doing this every week, what you tend to find is this is you know roughly there's 50,000 exchanges that are on the system so far for September, and around 50,000 complete exchange completions on the systems.
yeah.
What you tend to find is that they do tend to rise up and down at the same sort of level. So I'm
Sorry,
not
that number, just qualify that number. So you said exchanges, then exchanges and completions. That
okay.
isn't 50 plus 50. It's some of them are sims and some are not. Is that right?
Sins.
Sims, sorry, exchange and complete same time.
The red line is exchange and completes. The yellow line is withdrawn.
Yeah, you just referred though to the number of exchanges and completions in one period of time,
Yes,
50,000 or whatever.
Yes, we can track exchanges and completions in real time with a 2-week lag.
Got it. Okay.
So,
But the number you gave is a cumulative number of both exchange waiting to complete and exchanged and completed at the same time.
yes, but
Yeah.
so far on the system, around 50,000 of each. 50,000 withdrawals, 50,000 exchanges. Okay, or
Yeah.
exchange completion, same thing. And that will rise as the month goes up. The proportion will stay roughly the same. It's interesting. I did some analysis on the London market, which I didn't put into the show last week, but I did put into the write-up. And the London market is showing signs of softness in the last 2 months. Okay, it's not as end of the world. I'll tell you what is end of the world at the moment is the new homes market in London, simply because Sadiq Khan basically said you have to put 35% of it into affordable homes, and the numbers just don't add up. That's why they should be doing. Is it 20?
They never have.
Is it
That's why you get your 106s, isn't it?
But what I would say is this: is that London is a completely different beast to anywhere in the UK. Okay, you could have two completely different property markets. London is a lot to itself. I mean, London house prices have been drifting for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think also you've got to incorporate in there this weird. So during COVID, everybody wanted to move out of London and suddenly realised that the broadband was the same everywhere. So if they worked from home, it didn't matter whether they lived in Clapham or Coventry. I think there's a bit of a bounce or return back to London, which must have an impact on sales volume and pricing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, looking at the stats, I made a note of this is that the second homes market in the southwest is on its arse.
Yeah, and I think there's a number of factors there, because obviously you've got the fact that people moved away during COVID or tried to, and then felt actually it was better being more connected with civilization they were used to. But equally, I think the councils in those areas and government policy has made second home ownership a bit more of a challenge than it ever used to be.
Definitely. Prime sucks, but again, it's been sucking for a while.
Yeah.
I said the new homes is atrocious in London. The medium plus market in London is soft, but not bad. It's just soft. More medium market outside London's doing okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's always hyper local stuff, but fundamentally things are okay. You just make the market. And really, as estate agents, it doesn't really matter what the market's doing. It's how many houses you're selling. I mean, it winds me up is that how many agents actually are basically floating on the market. And isn't it interesting that so many estate agents, so the market's good, they say they put it down to themselves. When the market's bad, they blame the market.
I think you could also argue that a good market needs estate agents less than a bad market does.
Yes, it does. I agree with you. Right, let's move on. Price reductions. Okay, so the number of price reductions increased in September, bouncing back from around 11% to 14% of stock. Interestingly, here's a graph that you've not seen before. On average, this is looking back for the last 7 years, what percentage of homes get reduced on a month-by-month basis. So therefore, in January, 10% of homes on your books tend to get reduced, and it rises to September, where it gets to around 12. Again, let's remind ourselves in September it's 14, so there was more reductions in September than the average. However, this is where I think there's a huge opportunity, is the reductions in November dropped to 10 and the reductions dropped to 7 in December. I still think there's an opportunity.
Just talk about why that's an opportunity.
Because I think there's a lot of people in here that are, and what is interesting, we've amalgamated the October and November figures, by month. But interestingly, what you tend to find is the drop off on price reductions starts to hit around the middle of October. Generally, okay, if you look at it on a week,
as in fewer properties have their price reduced from the middle of October on. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Therefore, what we therefore we have overpriced stock stagnating until Christmas.
Yes, but I think some of that's linked to buyer impetus, isn't it? I think that it marries neatly with the
Wait,
fact
is
that
it chicken and the egg though? Is there not many buyers because there's not many decent properties? But if they did,
well, I think the problem is that measure has existed and has been similar for many, many years. So I don't know if it's necessarily an influenceable characteristic of the market beyond
I
which
don't know.
that
I don't know.
buyer activity slows at this part of the year. And also think about it, Chris. People's homes don't show as well in winter. People want people around their home when the garden's looking beautiful, etc. It's a pretty dark period in the British year, isn't it? Winter.
There you go. Right, let's move on. The average price of a property coming down in price is 404,800. The number of reductions is 25,624. And like we say, this is the percentage of properties. So last month, 14.08% of homes on the market reduced. Again, and we will say this throughout the whole of the show, is the cyclical nature of the UK property market is that if you look at the shape of those graphs, they are year on year. You can plot it. And
Yeah.
again, we'll say it here. Look at this market here is that there is almost like a band, an upper band and a lower band. And
Yeah.
it's just a trend, there's
Well, in the middle of that, you've got the resting heart rate, haven't you, of the market, and then above and below are
yes.
variations upon it. Yeah.
And all you tend to find, ladies and gentlemen, is that the the shape. It's whether the tide lifts you up towards the top upper heart rate or the lower heart rate, and anything in between. But the shape is always the same. And this is for listings, ladies and gentlemen. But when you look at the other graphs, they are this are almost identical in terms of its shape. Let's move on to gross sales. And again, you can see here is that the shape. It's just how far that white line is up above compared to the long-term average. And you can see here sales in the UK are doing really well. And interestingly, we said that back in 24, the number of
It's married well to 24, the line as it stands.
I mean, yeah, 24 between weeks 30, just after bank holiday, September was an exceptional month for sales. Okay.
Yeah.
And, we're nowhere near, well, in terms of that. And that's why the gap of sales the gap between sales agreed year to date has narrowed quite a lot in the last month, because you can see by that turquoise line that the number of sales was higher in September 24. So now the gap between this year and last year to date, is 53,000. Sorry, not 53,000, 5.3%. That was around 7%.
What's interesting, though, if we look at, and I don't have the dates, but if we look at, say, week 21 through 27, it seemed to track a little higher than the year before.
Yes.
So it may be that by the end of the measured period, that actually they are dissimilar, and that things just happened phased slightly differently. You look at the start of the year, week 3 through 13 to 15 there.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at the white line, which is 25, and the turquoise line, which is 24. And Kristian's talking about the gap. And you're right, we were ahead of last year, weren't we?
Yeah, the party started a little earlier, and now everybody's tired and going home. Yeah, fair enough. I'd be interested to see where the year-on-year figures sit at the end of this measurable year. So let's say the end of December. Because it may actually track in a very similar fashion, just phased slightly differently through the year.
Indeed. So that's the year-to-date figure. So I said 5.3% ahead of last year to date, and 15.3% ahead of 17.
So hang on, where are we now? We're just in October, November, December. 1,019,000. Okay.
Okay, so this is gross sales, not net sales. Remember, and this doesn't include new homes. The average asking price of a property set a sale agreed is 365,983. We will look at that in a second, and that is week 39. So you can see here, there's that 2024 figure where it was 1,300 sales more. But again, let's just remind ourselves, it was around 23,000 pre-COVID. So let's not beat ourselves up too much.
Good number.
It's very good. Right, the graph here. The red line shows you the average listing price. of properties coming onto the market, and the turquoise line shows you the average asking price of a property when it went to sale agreed. Let's just remind ourselves.
What does yellow mean, Chris?
I'll come on to that in a second.
Oh, okay.
The turquoise line, as I said, is average asking price of the property that went to sale agreed, and we know, apart from the 2 COVID years, that the average, again, this is a great stat, ladies and gentlemen, the average property always sells and has done for the last 25 years, except 20 and a bit of 21, always between 1 and 2% below the original, before the price it went to at sale agreed.
Apart from COVID.
Okay, apart from the COVID years. Okay, that's why if you're needing a line to say, well, why is pricing so relevant? Let's chance our arm and test the market here. And yeah, we know it's worth 100 grand, but we'll try it at 115. No, bring the bloody thing down to 102 and it'll sell for 100, for example. I'm not, obviously you might do it a bit differently with regard to the right move price banners, but you get the point, ladies and gentlemen. What's the yellow? That is London coming on that's the effect of how London really affects the UK averages, because that is an additional 4,000 to 5,000 houses in West London coming on the market. And when a terraced house in London is 1.3 million pounds and it's no more than 5,000 come on the market, the average just goes.
Got it.
And it happens every first and second week of September.
Cool.
Interesting, I thought. Right, okay, let's just remind, so average price, so that's his week 39 standalone. Pink is the average asking price of the properties coming on the market. The turquoise is the average asking price of a property going sale agreed, okay? The percentage difference is 17.5%, which is this difference here, which is bang on in line with the long-term average of 16 to 17%. Anything on that before we move over to some more stats?
What does that mean generally? Does that mean that our expectation, and I say "our" as a mixture of vendors and estate agents, our expectation is 17.5% higher than the real world? No. Okay, go on then.
No, well, okay. So lower price properties have a higher propensity or higher chance of selling. Okay.
Right.
So to give you an idea, I'm being rough figures. I haven't got time to go and find them now. Properties that are over £1 million have a 40% chance of selling. Properties under £250,000 have like a 70 or 80% chance of selling.
Right.
So therefore, the average listing price is everything coming on the market.
Yeah.
If only half of homes sell, and the lower price properties have a higher chance of selling, that drags the average down something rotten.
Yeah.
So for argument, let's use nice round figures. 1,000 homes might have come on. I know there was more than this, but let's use nice round numbers. 1,000 homes might have come onto the market last week with an average asking price of 430, and 500 homes sold subject to contract. But because more of them are at the lower end, that means that the average asking price of the properties that went sale agreed last week, let's say it was 500, for example, drags the average down.
So what would be nice if this was a line graph with multiple lines and the legend on price band, so say up to 300, 3 to 6, 6 to a million, million plus, and then it'd be.
I have done that a number of times for my fee-paying clients, because my job, ladies and gentlemen, is to create graphs like this on a local basis, so you can publish them yourself, because everyone is interested in what's happening to the property market locally. So let's move on. This is freshly updated because some graphs are monthly. So the red line is the number of UK residential sales agreed expressed as a percentage of listings. So for example, if you put on 100 homes and you sale agreed 80 as a percentage of 100 is obviously 80%. So it would be here. So therefore, there we are. We've dropped down into the 70s, which again is not, again, we're looking at the trends here. The blue bar charts is just the level of listings, again, just as a backdrop. Okay. I think this is a more important graph. Resi sale through rate. Okay. The Resi sale through rate is what percentage of your existing stock did you sell last month? This is a month in arrears stat. So therefore, 14.06% of properties in the UK in September sold subject to contract. And again, those of you who have not watched the show before, everyone thought everything was selling in COVID. It wasn't, 30%. Move on. Fall throughs, 6,193, which is a fall through rate of 24.23. What do we mean by fall through rate? If there was 100 house sales this week, and 25 fall throughs from your sales pipeline, 25 expressed as a percentage of 100 is 25%. In this instance, 24.2, which is absolutely bang on the long-term average of 24.2 for the last 8 years, 9 years.
That's the one number that needs to change. I don't really subscribe to this overvaluing thing, but I do think that the fall throughs in terms of getting buyer and seller commitment in sales cycles is so important.
Well, we got the new rules that were announced Sunday. Again, I'm a massive fan of reservation agreements, and again, Brian Mansell, who's a regular contributor to the show, and I think he's on the show in November. Massive fan of it. And again, if you're an estate agency boss and if you haven't looked into it, make sure that you do pick a model where they actually train your team, your valuers, because valuers see it as a negative thing, and you can, if you're trained right, you can actually see it as a listing getter, not a listing blocker.
I totally agree with you, and I think that why wouldn't somebody commit? It's the same, a really good example is instructing solicitors at listing. If you're not willing to, why?
You're so right. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can instruct solicitors on day of listing and you can have a reservation agreement, your numbers will transform.
Yeah.
I see.
You've got modern method as well to bring in there. But yeah, I think it's just burning money in the industry, and it's so sad.
It's because estate agents want the listing more than the homeowner wants the sale. I say it all the way. Estate agents don't care if they sell the house as long as they get the listing and the other competitor doesn't. Sure.
Maybe. I think that if you look at figures where they only drop sales due to violent changes in circumstance, so somebody dies, divorce or whatever, loses their job and suddenly has to change tack in terms of their housing journey, those figures sit at around 2%. So if that's for real, where when there's a constraint in the deal and people have committed, let's call it a reservation agreement for the want of better description, the fall through figures are absolutely tiny, which means that if you take that away from your total percentage of fall throughs, most of them are discretionary. People just change their mind. And that's probably the bit that needs to be eradicated.
And that's why I love reservation agreements, because is it weird is that as a human being, if you've got skin in the game, how many times have we lost a sale? If it doesn't exchange by tomorrow, I'm pulling out. Damn well it's not going to pull out, exchange. So no one can lose face, so they pull out. But if you've got to lose $3,000 in a reservation agreement, you do think on. Again, it comes down to communication, isn't it? Anyway. Okay, so that's the number of resi sale falls, and the red line is the trend line. Okay, I think this is a more important graph. What percentage of your sales pipeline? Let's just remind ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, what the sales pipeline is looking at as we went into the 1st of October. 500.
So why does your one graph track north and the other track south? Just for the idiot in the room, if you just explain that. That's tracking south. And the one above is tracking north, graph 21.
Well, if you think about it, that's hard numbers.
Okay.
So pipelines fall throughs are higher, pipelines are higher.
Yeah.
So therefore the number
because it's tracking a number, not a percent.
That's tracking
okay, fine.
A number.
Yeah.
Tracking a percentage.
Got it. Thank you so much. I not looked hard enough at your why.
Don't worry. So 1 in 20 houses from your sales pipeline fall through a month nationally.
Yeah.
Okay. Still not good, but that's what happens. Okay, so net sales is gross sales less fall throughs. We finished last week on 19,000 371. So therefore, again, you can see here, just under 1,000 less than last month.
Yeah.
Okay, but again, let's just remind ourselves, last week 39 in 24 was identical to week 39 in 2021 when the market was crazy.
Hmm.
Okay, net sales 776,000, which is 4.5% ahead of last year and 10% higher than 17, 18, and 19.
Nothing wrong with that number.
Yeah, so these are not your exchanges, but they are your exchanges, if you know what I mean, because this is what you're going to get paid on. We won't get this number probably until we'll get this number, an indication at the end of December, but we won't get it confirmed and probably until late spring. We Normally we can rely on around 200,000 homes at being added, because again, some of them are not new homes, some of them are office blocks converted to new homes, so they don't go through on the new build figures, but they do go on the new dwelling figures. So you've got
Right.
okay. Yeah, we will finish the UK about a million second hand, and I think we'll end up on about 1.18 when we bring
Okay.
new homes in. Because again, London new homes is on its arse because of selling it can't. I'm not being political, but that's
Yeah.
just not worth building new homes at the moment in London. So that's where I think we're going to stand. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of your exchange income, you should be just slightly higher, probably about 5% higher than you were last year. Okay, that's what I'm predicting. Let's move on. The white line is the number of net sales on a week-by-week basis. And again, we are just slightly, but the yellow line is 24. We're just slightly below them. But again, if you look compared to previous years, earlier in the year, the white line was above the yellow line in most of the time, wasn't it? Just here, as you can see here.
Yeah.
And like you say, the yellow line has taken over. But again, 24 was a good September and October. So we'll see how that goes. Anything on that?
Not particularly, no. No.
Okay. Again, it just shows you, ladies and gentlemen, the cyclical nature that you have an upper limit and a lower limit and a resting heart rate, and it just tends to the shape is almost identical apart from the purple, which is 2020, which was obviously COVID years, and the 2021 was the hangover of that going into 21, but then she died down a bit more proper by late summer, early spring. Price changes as a percentage of listings and gross sales as a percentage of listings. We've already done exchanges and withdrawn. Okay, this is the new up-to-date figures for September. But again, do remember, like I said on this graph here, we're still waiting for the rest of those numbers to come in. Half of properties that left estate agents' books exchanged, half withdrew. But that number will change. I suspect it'll end up on around 53, 54. We've already done new homes and the number of sales in agents' pipelines. We've had the pound per square foot figures come through, and ladies and gentlemen, this is probably one of the most important figures, because the yellow line, the sold subject to contract figure, matches the land registry figure 5 months in advance with a 98% accuracy rate. So if you want to know, so if this number drops 2% in a month, the land registry will drop 2% in 5 or 6 months' time. Okay. So therefore, the yellow line in the last couple of months on sale agreed has dropped from around 341 to 336, which is minuscule, but it is a slight easing off. Okay. So we've had prices. So between December and March, land registry house prices will drop about 1.5%. So again, if you want to know what's happening to the property market, you want to know where the bottom of the market is, you want to know where the top of the market is, you follow that yellow line. Okay. Couple of extra graphs just for bonuses. The proportional split between resi sales stock, which is the red, and the proportion of sales agreed in your pipeline, the purple. Those are the proportions, and those are the hard numbers. Ladies and gentlemen, all the graphs are available to download on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, scroll down to the bottom, little link at the bottom, and you can download them. All I ask is you can use them on your vowels, you can use them internally, but please, if you want to use them on social media, that you just send me a text message. And the reason being is my daytime job, as I said, is a content writer talking about local property markets, and some agents, my fee-paying clients do use these, so it wouldn't be right for you to use them as well if someone else is using them in your town. But if I don't have a client in your town and you ask me nicely, I'm more than happy to give you permission. Okay, Kristian, any thoughts before we go to St Albans?
Not particularly. I think it's interesting. We talked a little bit about the fall through rate, and I guess that's the most important metric, really, because that's work that you've already done and money you're losing. The market seems to be quite steady. I think when we talked I think we were the beginning of September, maybe the second week, and it looked like there was a slow restart to the market, but it seems like it's just normal, doesn't it? Business as usual.
Yeah, it's Groundhog Day. And again, that's the beautiful nature of the property market. Oh, well, I'm sure you'll have some final thoughts at the end of the show. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the second part of the show, where we go to St Albans and where we'll analyse the different agents. We'll see if anyone's made any changes since we went there in January. So without further ado, let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, for the purposes of this analysis, we're using a piece of kit called Insight. Insight is a platform from a firm called 20EA. 20EA have a number of different platforms for estate agents. This particular one, called Insight, is basically Rightmove Plus on steroids with glitter balls and lasers. It's just amazing. I must stress to you that 20EA have not paid me to mention their package. I use this package free of charge to enable me to create the stats that you've already seen in the first part of the show. And the second part of the show is that we analyze a town or a city. The bit of kit itself is available to estate agents. There are a number of versions. There is a free version, which allows you to look at the stats looking back 3 months. There is a one based on a town with 10 postcode districts. I won't mention the cost, but probably the cost of a night out for 4 people at say Prezzo or Pizza Express is the sort of cost that we're talking. Please do not mention my name. I'm not on commission in any way. There's also a regional package and there's a national package. And again, on all the paid for versions, you can have 5 years plus the year you're in. The amount of insight it gives, and if you are an agent that suffers from overvaluing or cheap fees, if you've got the stats that actually show that you're actually better than your competitors, then it's an amazing bit of kit and you can use it to your advantage. But without further ado, let's go and have a look at the stats. So Kristian, as always, just jump in whenever you see something. So we're looking at residential sales to start with. There's not much information on lettings. We will look at lettings towards the end, but we'll mainly residential sales. For the St area St Albans, we are looking at the postcodes of AL 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay.
Quite expensive.
Okay, yeah. Well, it is home county suburban commuter belt. In the last 5 and a bit years, 18,423 homes have come onto the market with an average asking price of 656,461. If we move this, we can also have a look at fall throughs, exchanges, price changes, relistings, sale agreeds, and withdrawals. So again, we can just have a quick look at the sale agreeds, and you can see here that there's not much difference between the sale agreed and the new instruction, although there has been some meaty price rises in the last 5 and a bit years. Nothing huge, but there has been. So we've got to take that with a slight pinch of salt. So if I was comparing that, I would do a year on year in isolation. Right, let's have a look and see what's happening. So most estate agents do love to see how they're comparing against their competitors. So without further ado, let's go and have a look at Frost's. And you can see here that their average price of the property that comes onto the market is 600,000, which is slightly lower than the average. So again, you tend to find that with the number one agent, the volume agent, is that they tend to operate in the lower to middle market as opposed to the middle to upper. I have seen it, but it is quite rare. And you can see here that since 2020, their market share grew from around that early teens to around the 20% mark in the 22-23, and has drifted slightly to nearer the mid to late teens as opposed to the late teens in the last 18 months. There seems to be some drops here. So there we go. So that looks like sitting on your stock in December and putting it on in January, because if you notice those two spikes, there is a corresponding huge spike before. It looks like there wasn't a similar spike in 24 in December. So either you didn't delay the stock coming on the market, or what happened is that you don't hit so much. So again, the choice is, you might have changed your way you did it, or you just might have not held it back. Who knows? Let's go to Ashton's, and you can see here that the average price of an Ashton's house is 692,000, which is slightly higher. And if we were using a supermarket analogy, I would say more they were Sainsbury's knocking on the door of a Marks and Spencer's agent. You can see that their market share has drifted slightly since 2022. Not much, although probably 22 was a slight drift into 23, and then since then, if you could put an imaginary trend line, I would say that is flatline with a slight amount of growth, but nowhere near as what it was in 21. Moving over to Cassidy Tate, looks like 2020 was their year of choice, but since then, nicely middle of the road, around that 8% mark, with a slight growth, tending to be kept in the lane. And you can see here that their average price is 751. So I suspect Cassidy and Tate are going to be more middle to upper market in the way that they operate. More of a Marks and Spencer's, possibly even a Waitrose agent. Bradford and Howley. Collinson Hall. So what have we got here? So we've got some December spikes. Can you just see if Collinson Hall is independent or part of a corporate? I don't recognize the name, and normally those spikes are Boxing Day spikes. Can you just have a look? I'll just keep talking. Paul Barker, nice growth. Hamptons, as you can see, 973 market share growth. That's good. We will look at the upper quartile in a second, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go look at Connell's. And again, there's the Christmas spikes. As you can see there, the Boxing Day spikes. Okay, but then they get clobbered in January. There you go. That's Hartwood Homes. William H. Brown. Again, there's your Connell sequence spikes. Finer Country. Slight drifting downwards there, okay? Carter Hayward. Growth. JW & Co. Lower end of the market. Nice and steady. Northwood. Daniels. Oliver and Ackers. Strutt and Parker. Hold on, there's two JWs there. So if you added those up, then that would bring it more into this sort of, well, it wouldn't actually bring that much more in. But again, we'll just whiz through these. Hold on. There we go. Hold on. Put these through. There we go.
Yeah, Collinson Hall is very independent by the looks of it.
Okay, so obviously they must have a Boxing Day special.
Mm.
Okay, I'm assuming that. Okay. Right, let's look at the upper quartile and just see.
So you've got a market there of moderately high value, certainly, yeah, it's not moderately high value with 17, 27, 30. So you've got basically 40% in 4 agents, with one of them having 17.45. It's a market of long-term commitment to branding, isn't it?
I mean, this is the 1 million market, and now again you can see. Now again, let's just look. It looks like Cassidy and Hamptons have now moved in, and we did say with Cassidy and take their middle to upper market.
Yeah, Frost still holding the top spot though. With Ashton's not so far behind. It's a really interesting market. So Ashton's are what, 2.83 behind, give or take. Yeah.
So
Really interesting
there's
space.
2 million, but there's only 300,000. Let's do that to 1.5. So
So Savills and Hamptons now appear.
yeah, but
Fine and
again,
Country.
remember, that's not many houses over 2 million in St Albans. Let's have a look. One and a
Is there
half.
not? Well,
No,
769 over how many years? 5 years,
that's
is
one
it?
and a
Yeah.
half million. Okay.
Yeah.
So it does look like Frost do very well into the early millions,
Yeah.
but as soon as you almost get there was like a cliff face there that they drop off afterwards.
Yeah.
But again, there's nothing a bad thing because the highest price properties don't sell as well. So I do
Well,
like.
and at 1%, they're earning over 6 grand on average. Why bother with the top end stuff? More withdrawal.
Okay, let's just get rid of that. And again, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't got new homes on this one, and you can go to postcode districts if you want. And again, you can split it down into types of property as well. Let us just go and see if there's any agents that are coming up on, like an EXP or something. Let's look, see, is there anyone that's putting any trees up? Here we go. So Paul Barker and Bradford and Howley.
Mm,
Isn't that interesting?
yeah. So what, you've just cut it down to 1 year, have you? I didn't see what you did there.
That was 1 year.
Right.
So
There you go.
where were Bradford and Howley and Paul Barker? Okay, they were fourth or fifth. Let's just remind ourselves.
So it seems to me that it's Collinson Hall that have changed, not those two. They've
Yeah,
taken up
I'm
the
really
gap
interested.
left by.
Yeah, so it looks like in terms of moving and the shaking, Paul
Mm,
Barker's seemed to be the one that seemed to be
doing well.
the agent of choice when it comes to if we were measuring it against growth. Interesting. Right. Okay. Well done. Well done. And again, right, let's move on. Stock levels, and you can see here that the black line is 25, and we are slightly below the 2020 figure, which is quite rare because normally on these graphs, the black line is the one that's ahead. We are slightly ahead of last year, which is the green line. So again, there we go. There's the figures there. Is that there's 1,378 homes for sale um, in the town. Well, no, it's a city. My apologies, because it's got a cathedral, hasn't it? Compared to that's quite high in 2020, so a lot more houses on the market. Interesting. No new homes on that. Let's move on. Right then. Okay, so what we're looking at here, there's a lot of data here, and we're looking here at the last 2 years.
That's an interesting one, Chris.
What's that, mate?
Frost is LSL.
Yes. Yeah, but hold on. Remember, LSL are they don't own their branches anymore.
No. I get that completely. It was more just
It's a
that.
franchised route. I believe if I'm going off memory now, that Frost is owned by a chap called Greg Young, who used to be the right hand man of John Cook,
Right.
and top bloke is John Cook, obviously, but Greg as well. I could remind him. I keep reminding him every time I say he gave me the worst bollocking of my life at work came from him, and it changed my life in a good way. Not at the time, but afterwards. And I thank him. Thankfully, he's a top man, and I believe he's got a couple of guys in Frost that are also equity partners as well. That's what I believe. Okay. I haven't seen him face to face. I think I saw him at the Estes or EA Masters a few years ago. I haven't seen him for ages. Top bloke. Anyway, Greg, if you're watching, nice to meet you, mate. Right, okay. What have we got here? Okay, what have we got here? So some nice here, which shows you the growth of market share for listings. So again, you might want to just have a look, see how you're getting on. So this is the last 12 months. This is this year versus last year, which is the 12 months before that. So Ashton's are growing, but so is Paul Barker. But this is where the true gold is, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you to totally ignore new instruction market share, sale agreed, and sale agreed percentage. The true gold is in these four columns here, exchanged and withdrawn. Because if you add up the exchange percentage and the withdrawn percentage, they all add up to 100% on every line, Why is that important? Well, in the last 2 years, in those postcodes, 56.43% of the homes that have left Frost books you've been paid on, and 43.57% of the homes that have left your books in those postcodes you haven't been paid on. So therefore, Frosts have an exchange to listing ratio of 56.43, whilst Ashton's are at 65.6, Cassidy and Tate at 55. Remembering Cassidy and Tate are a posh agent, so their numbers are going to be a bit lower. And we can compare the posh stuff to level the playing field on that one. Bradford and Howley at 62, Paul Barker at 64, and then we keep going down. Collinson Hall at 54, Hampton's at 48, Connell's
3 million quid.
37%, Hartwood Homes 74, William H. Brown 35. So therefore, and again, I'm just using pure statistics here, but if I was Hartwood Homes and I knew that I was up against Connells, and I'm not getting at Connells in any way, shape, or form, because Connells, guys and girls, your head office has this piece of kit. I know you do, because it's an amazing. All the big agencies have it. So I'm sure. In fact, a lot of them, the bigger agents, will have this. So therefore, this is how I told you at the top of the show. If you're a great agent and you're doing the job, this is how powerful this is. So I put 74.18, which is Hartwood Homes, and then I'm dividing it by the Connells figure of 37.86. And now that gives me 1.9593, which means if I was Hartwood Homes, you could look them in the eye and say, Mrs. Miggins, you have a 95% greater chance of moving home with me against Connells. I'm not calling Connells. I'm just telling you these, data doesn't lie. And look at the mix of properties. I've got a bit. Ashton's figure at 65.6 for being a volume agent is exceptional. That is really good. And there are some really good stuff in there. Let's just have a quick look and see who's moving and the shaking. Daniel's at 71, well done. David Chadwick at 71. It just shows you the smaller agents have a higher chance, generally have a better chance. The average is 53, but there's some amazing numbers in there, isn't there?
Yeah, you got to love Power BI, haven't you? Great piece of software from Microsoft. So if you take the exchange then and order it by exchange.
Well, that's what, number or percentage?
Percentage.
Again, this is going to bring in some of the baby agents where the numbers
That's all right. So, well, I looked at that figure there, the withdrawn figure. Oh, God almighty, doesn't it?
Can you? You only look, some of these so that's why you have to take it with a slight pinch of salt.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, isn't it? In terms of volume, marrying volume to percentage exchange. I just took the top number. I think it was 43%. I did 1175 times £6,000 average fee and took off 40% of it. It's 3 million quid over whatever period this measures. 5 years, is it? No, 2 years.
It's 2 years.
3 million quid in 2 years, 1.5 a year of work you don't get paid.
Who's this? What's this figure?
It was the top thrust. So if I take 1175 by £6,000 average fee and
slow down.
Go on.
What are you picking? So everyone could.
Number one, Frosts. So
Frosts. Right.
1175 new instruction, total opportunity value of 1175 times an average fee. Pick anyone you like. Let's go with £6,000.
Yep.
And then times that by 0.43.
Yep.
3 million quid.
What I would like you to do is what is if Frost's exchanged at the same level as Ashton's, so we'll call that nearest damn it 9%. So could you do 1,175 times 9%?
Hang on a second, sorry. So we're going to do 1,175.
Or 9% of that. Got it? Times 0.09.
Yeah, hang on. 1175 times 0.09.
What's that?
Yeah, 105.75, so 106.
Times that, and we said let's work on the assumption that it's a 1% fee.
Yeah, so 6 grand, yeah.
6 grand.
634,500 English pounds, Chris.
Frosts, in the last 2 years, you have let over 300 grand a year slip through your fingers because if you had an exchange ratio the same as Ashton's, you would be earning 300 grand a year each per year, which is a lot of pennies. This is the power of data, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, the numbers are out there. You have to analyze it and work out where do I need to improve, and this is a great way to improve your lot. Let's move on and look at the withdrawal rates. 46.23, which is quite high, which is in line. Sorry, that is in line with the national average. And you can see here, Ashton's, because their exchange ratio is better, it means their withdrawal rate is much lower. And again, look at Connell's. You know, if you put your house on the market with Connell's, you have over a 6 in 10 chance of not selling. Again,
Generally, the only real measure of any business or estate agency business is the P&L and the balance sheet. But it is interesting when you look at them statistically that there's money left on the table, isn't there, in the industry?
Money left on the table. Right, let's just go for the posh bit. We'll go 840,000, and again, Ashton's are doing well. Okay, let's just move that up a bit. So again, we're now 1.1. We're now okay. Let's just make that nice and clean. Okay, let's do 1 million.
So what do we got? We've got 1,100 houses over 2 years. Is that 2 years? 1,100 houses came to market at a million plus.
Yes, 48.6% of I've got
the exchange.
Not bad. And if you look at the exchange ratio, Ashton's are still doing well at 59, as is Bradford and Howley at 58, as is Paul Barker at 59. Frost's slipped a bit. Cassidy and Tate, again, doing well at 50, but again, still room for improvement. Let us take that up to 1.25 million. What changes now? Now, Cassidy has slipped. Again, look, if we're all against Stratton Parker at 36, everyone can beat Stratton Parker. Let's go again. Again, guys and girls, if you've not got this bit of kit, you can prepare this on your laptop and take it out and show it to them. And how do you sell it to them? Just watch the show and just copy what I say. If you need any training or support on it, my daytime job, ladies and gentlemen, is I use property data to help estate agents get more listings. So if you are wanting to grow your estate agency, I use the power of data like this and other data to attract landlords and vendors to your agency. If you're happy with your market share and you don't need to grow, ignore me, because there'll be another agent in St Albans that will call me for my services. Okay. Okay. Let's look at Ashton's. So Ashton's now all of a sudden at 1.5, Cassidy and Tate are beating Ashton's. So again, you can change this, you can change this parameter. So if it's between 1.3 and 1.6, you can go 1.3 to 1.6, put this in. And as long as you can explain it, again, I can help you with that. It was so powerful. Okay, let's move on. Right, here's your overvaluing stats, ladies and gentlemen. So what happens here is this. Okay, so the first thing is that we look at the overvaluing stats, okay, and therefore 20EA have a AVM, an automated valuation model, think a bit like a Valpal figure for every house in the UK. And what they do is they analyze what you put the house on the market for versus what they think it is. And in the last 2 years, Frosts have overvalued by 2.17%, and Ashton's have overvalued by 1.23%. And as we go down here, you can see the percentage of homes, the percentage of overvaluing into the opinion of 20EA. Next, they look at all of your exchanges, okay, in the last 2 years, and then they analyze what did you sell the house for on the land registry compared to what they thought the house, 20EA thought the house was worth on day of new instruction. And you can see here that Frost's got on average 4.79% less than the normal than the normal at the average St Albans agent, whilst Ashton's at 2.93, Cassidy and Tate 4.07. So the issue there is that if you really want to analyze this, you take this figure from that, and that gives you your net figure. But it's not a pretty thing, and a lot of people don't like exchanges. So 20EA put this converted into pound notes and said, right, if everyone put on a £700,000 house, what would each agent in St Albans achieve for it? And here you can see here that, look, on average, Bradford and Howley get 689,776, which is £6,345 more than the average St Albans agents. And as you go down there, you can see here that there is some really interesting variances of numbers. So if I was Bradford and Howley, I could say, and I was up against, say, Paul Barker, I could say I take this number away from that number, and I could say, Mr. and Mrs. Miggins, I will achieve you £8,100 more for your house. Or if it was an average 700 grand house, than the other agent. And here's the proof. It's powerful stuff, isn't it?
It is. You know, we were looking a moment ago at Hartwood and their exchange ratio, and then we look here down at their variance to average at, you know, up towards 1%. They're a wise choice to sell your home, as are, I would say, Ashton's. Really, I mean, Ashton's.
I'm liking Ashton's because you've got, you know, bottom line is, did you sell the house or not? 60% chance, yeah. Naptail's over 1.2 million, but there's not houses over that, and they get you a fairly decent price.
Yeah, and they've got the sort of brand recognition that you probably associate with and choose. You said sort of Waitrose, M&S, which I think are probably reasonably good.
I believe they are a regional agent. You know, if I was Frost's, I might be looking at the prices I achieve. Could we get a bit better? There's a, you know, look, you're slightly.
Well, again, you know, the thing with Ashton's is if you live in the area, and let's say you take a coffee on the high street with your friends, Ashton's looks good.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, you know, if I was the boss of Frost's, I might be saying just slightly overvaluing a bit. Nothing silly, you know. There's some overvaluing stats in there that are quite high. But again, it doesn't matter if they're overvaluing if you're getting the prices down. You know,
works though, doesn't it?
Okay,
works a treat.
See, look, we've got here. Let's just look. Look, Collinson's here. Okay, hold on. Let's pull that back. Okay, let's just do this. Okay, there's a direct link. So we said Collinson's have a 54% exchange ratio, but if we look at Collinson's here, they slightly overvalue. Okay, they get a decent price, but they don't. Their sales ratio is lower. Okay, let's look at Paul Barker. Really good exchange level at 64. Let's see what price they get. 681, which is just off, but again, not bad at all. But again, if we compare Ashton's, look, 65, do you get the house sold or not? Yes or no? Yeah, 65, well done. And what price did you get? 4 grand more. The only thing that Ashton's could come a cropper on now is how long do they take to sell a house? Let's go and have a look. And again, here, look, Ashton's on average 69 days from new instruction to sale agreed. Collinson all at 69. Cassidy Tate 71.
Let's just land on Frost's for me just to get the number there. Halfway up, give or take. 68. Okay, 68 and 69 was Ashton's, wasn't it?
Yep.
There you go. So the pricing strategy doesn't seem to make a great deal of difference in terms
so you're looking
of time
at
to SSTC.
New instruction sale agreed at 77 days. That's the average, and you're all look like a little bit below. On average, 135 days to get a sale agreed through to completion. Right. Okay. Let's move on to the final graph, which is rentals. So Frost's. That's decent growth. I'm liking that. Northwood. So again, the reason here is that you can tell the size of the portfolio by the number of rental properties there are that they put on the market. There is a formula I use It's dependent on whether it's in London or not. It's dependent if it's a student city or not. But you can tell, the trend is number of properties come on the market. But I used to be head of recruitment for Belvoir, so I know that the formula. We worked it all out. Let's look at open rent. It's really rare that open rent are not number one. But again, look at that, ladies and gentlemen. That there were around 5% of the market, and now it's at around 10. Can I just remind you, ladies and gentlemen, this is the biggest threat of lettings because 51.2% of the houses,
other than the government.
no, okay, no, 51.2% of houses that open rent
Yeah.
in the last 2 years were previously on the market with a high street agent. The number of rental properties in the UK is still growing. That is a fact. It doesn't feel that way, but again, you don't stop working on sentiment and start working on data. Let's look at leaders. They're dropping. Gem lettings growing. Collinson Hall. Space lettings. Ashton's nice and steady. Cassidy and Tate, nice and steady. We'll go down to number 15.
These are starting now. I mean, depending on the average tenancy duration, these are quite low volume, aren't they?
They are.
In terms of new instructions over a 5-year period, to be below 300 is quite low. If you just jump back up to the top. Yeah, so in terms of the market, the top 4 in 5 years have done 5,000 units of 1499. So yeah, 33%, give or take. And open rent is a really interesting one because we've said this before, Chris, but the measure of open rent is at face value a market share problem. But that's not the real problem. The problem, I think, with open rent is that the customers in the space where open rent are performing do not value the thing that letting agents get out of bed early to deliver. And that, for me, is a value proposition issue.
Because we're not very good at showing our value, because we're only our landlords when there's problems, and we should be watching our properties portfolios, getting the landlords in, talking to them. Again, if you want to grow your lettings agency, do give me a call. I can only work for one agent in St Albans. If that is of interest, do give me a call. If you're happy with your lot, don't ring me, one of your competitors will. Right. Any final couple of sentences? We're getting to the hour mark. I don't want to run over too much.
No. I enjoyed our brief sergeant to St Albans. It's an interesting market dominated by key players. I think brand is definitely a factor, local recognition there. And it's interesting to talk about a space where the average price is over that, well, way over that 500 mark. It makes for some interesting stats, and I think, as you've just said quite clearly, the sales is quite interesting. Lettings more so, in that somebody isn't there just eating their lunch; they're eating their lunch and supper. And it's if you extrapolate that number 5 to 10% over 4 to 5 years, as we increase our digitalization, as ChatGPT starts to become the method of choice for research. I think that open rent number is going to grow and grow to the point where the rest of the market will not be rich pickings, which is frightening.
Unless you do something different and create a value.
Well, if you look at many estate agents nest their exit value in their lettings portfolio, not their sales. So the exit values of entrepreneurs in those areas where open rent are dominating is evaporating, and that's dangerous. You're doing 30, 10, 12, whatever years of knuckle stripping to build an exit value that is just being whipped away by a provider with a stronger value proposition.
If you're an estate or letting agent in St Albans and you want to stabilise your business or grow, then please do give me a call. My telephone number is 07950 147 572. But of course, if you think that's a bad idea and you don't want to grow your agency, don't worry, one of your competitors will. Kristian, thank you for your time today. Thank you for watching the show, and we'll see you next week for week 40 of the UK Property Market Stats Show. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. See you soon.